coaching career. I had people, I had George Kingston, and I had Claire Drake.
Yes.
Tom Watt, guys like that were ahead of the curve, and they taught me a lot. They were great mentors. I learned so much from those guys. It was terrific.
I spent one season with George Kingston in Florida, and he was absolutely wonderful.
He's a real gentleman. I think he's so knowledgeable. He's so patient with everybody, and he's just he really is a good support guy for. In '84, I was a young coach with the national team, the Olympic team that year, and I had George work with us as an assistant coach, and his stability was amazing. It was really good for me to work alongside a guy so knowledgeable and a guy so patient, and he's a terrific guy. Absolutely. And Claire Drake, wow, amazing.
I remember George, the way I felt around him, I always felt supported, and I felt he made me feel like I know a lot about the game. It's funny how certain people make you feel.
Yeah.
And he was so respectful, and it was a great transition for me to work with Florida and with Jacques because of George. So yeah. Great memories of him.
Well, your comments are very astute. Well done. You learned a lot. Hey, Wally. Is that Wally?
Hey, Wally.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Wally.
You got your thing turned off, Wally. Your mic.
I'm going to Winnipeg tomorrow morning. My brother was riding his bike and had a serious accident and hit by a truck. So, 80 years old, riding his bike at 7 in the morning in Winnipeg, but he was walking across the intersection and dealing with a broken lower left leg that was operated on yesterday, and fractured ribs and a couple cracked vertebrae. But he seems to be talking a lot anyway. He's going okay, but I'll be there to just to see how things are. But good to hear you guys got started. I love what you're talking about. I got to work with George and Claire both, and their influence on me was enormous. Just getting the opportunity to, talk to them, be with them. And I've shared many times, Thomas, Claire Drake did a clinic, and Dave, you had set that up with the Western Hockey League coaches at the Saddle Dome Center of Excellence. Yep. And I remember him coming in, listening to the speaker, and I was sitting fairly close and could look at him, and he was writing, and he had a pencil and paper, and he would doze off, and then all of a sudden he'd wake up and he'd start writing again, and then he'd listen, and then he did a presentation, I think it was right after that, on defensive zone cover. And to this day, it's sort of the model for me. It was the most brilliant, structured, progressive. It just made total sense, give you a big picture of how to play in your zone. So that's my fond memory of Claire, just a unique individual. Both of them, I think they sort of walked the talk. They had a philosophy and they lived it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Coached it. So that's what really, really impressed me. But Thomas, did you have any European mentors before you came over here? Anybody?
Well, my mentors, two of them are on the call today. So that's Dave and Wally. And then I had, of course, Tarasov and Luděk Bukac. I read all Luděk Bukac's books. My dad was a close friend with Luděk. And Tarasov, of course, only from books. And again, from his students like Yurzinov and all his players learning the game. So those four people, two including you and Tarasov and Luděk Bukac, were definitely, until today, extremely influential in my life, in my coaching, in my hockey understanding. And I think still extremely valid. As much as the game, we say, moved forward, many of those principles, philosophies, individual tactics, team tactics, group tactics, they are still extremely valid and sometimes lost. And so I have some questions for Dave and his experience, if that's okay.
Really good. I want to introduce Laura. Laura, what year of law are you in right now?
Hi, Wally. I'm in my third year of law.
Okay. I met Laura doing an HP evaluation for a male coach in Junior B and watched her run a drill. And boy, I just said, wow, pretty amazing. And apparently, Laura, you started coaching with your dad at a very young age and you got in love with coaching. And she's moved up the ladder to where she assisted a midget AAA team and coach at Alberta Cups, winning a challenge with one of the teams. And I consider, in my mind, one of the top female coaching prospects. When she's done law school, like a lot of hockey coaches who are tired of their practice, I hope you get back into the coaching. So anyway, Laura, that's just so glad you could chime in.
Oh, thank you.
Where are you at, Laura?
I'm in Saskatoon.
Oh,
Okay. Dave's in Phoenix, and Thomas is in Prague, and Tom has joined us again as usual, and it's good to start. Now, Thomas, I'm going to let you ask Dave a question or two because the questions sort of, Laura, come from our era. We brought up in a sharing, learning, cooperative coaching growth environment and really fed off one another. And that doesn't seem to be happening today. It's sort of a drill copy generation and a closed door, keep it in your pocket kind of generation. So, Thomas, if you could keep that learning door open and just ask your questions, we'll see where it goes.
The first thing, Dave, I would love to, if you would be able to elaborate a little bit on what you said the last time. And it absolutely struck me. You said that the Russians deeply understood why they are doing certain things. The players truly understood what it would do to you, to other teams, if they would stretch, if they would use the D-man joining the rush, etc., etc. Would you talk as a coach and teacher how important it is for the players to deeply understand why we are doing things?
yeah, Thomas, you're right. And, if you look back at the Russians, just one observation I would make would be when they were in summer training, they were on the ice, but they also played a lot of soccer and they played a lot of basketball. And so a lot of those tactics in those two sports are very applicable to understanding hockey, and is really clear. So that that made the Russians, I think, always clearly understand what they were doing to us, and they did it a lot, and it was difficult to defend. I would say one thing. I've always felt that understanding precedes execution. It's interesting. We often tell young players, what they have to do, how they have to do it. But unless you tell them why they have to do it and they grasp that idea, things are not in context then. So you have to always stress that. And so I've always been, and I learned this from George Kingston, Claire Drake, when they coached, I watched them coach, I watched them present. I always saw how they talked about the why as much as the what and how of doing things on the ice, Thomas. So I think that's really important. I think if you're going to ask players to play a certain way, there has to be some understanding of it. And then there has to be some collectivity to it. Like it's fine to have a strategy, a tactical plan, whatever you want to call it, but everybody's got to buy into it. And, my time with the national team, that was an easy sell. It wasn't difficult. We were in a playing field that was not very even. When we played the Czechs and the Russians, they were just so good and so smart with their game that they gave us a lot of difficulty. And so I learned then that, these teams understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so I always took that approach, national team. And then I took it into the Flames too, as well, when I started my NHL career coaching. But that was a little different. There's always your personnel, the guys you're coaching, sometimes give you thought for doing things a little bit different at certain levels. So, but really, to answer your question, understanding precedes execution, and you have to have that. And that always impressed me about the Czechs and the Russians. And I'm not going to say the Finns weren't good, but I always felt in their heyday, when the Russians were at their very best in the middle 80s to about maybe the early 90s, they were really at their top. And I've talked to Tikhonov, some of those guys when I was over there coaching, and they agree that was a time when they were at their best. And the only team that could play with them and play them nose up was the Czechs. Everybody else, we had to compensate. We had to play much more respectful game, reactive game. The only one who could play proactively against them was the Czechs. And so I always made a point when I was coaching the national team to get as much video as I could get from the Czechs and the Russians, whether it be league play or international play. I wanted to know what other teams were doing and how they could compete with these guys, because that was our challenge, to step our game up to a level that was difficult to reach.
Thomas, I just wanted to ask Laura a question. Coaching female hockey and Tom, the why. Females tend to want to know why. Guys don't necessarily. Can you just explain that, Laura? You growing young guys, I'm sure, coaching young guys, and then young girls. And Dave, this is something that I talk about often, mentoring coaches in Canada, because in their coaching, we're trying to get them to ask more questions and get the players to explain what they're thinking and understand why they're doing things. So, Laura, go ahead, and then I'll go back to Dave.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to the way you were talking about helping people understand, not just the process, but the why behind it. And I think with female hockey, I found that is almost explaining the why almost precedes the actual systems and the this and that, because at every single moment, even asking, or saying, this is where we're going to start a drill, automatically the girls look at you. It's why, coach, right? Line up in the corner, why, coach? And so I've almost built it into my coaching strategy to include the whys behind not every point of the drill, but so they have an overall macro understanding of what the point is, what the goal is, but ensuring that at the major points of the drill or the major points of the system, that we're roping that end goal why into each step. And when I played boys hockey when I was young and coached a little bit of boys hockey, and we tried to do a little bit of that as well. And I think that because I was coaching with my dad, and I think it was just because growing up, I always asked why a lot more than my male teammates. But I do find that when you're able to really break those processes down and explain it every step of kind of why we're doing something, it brings that collective understanding and almost helps feed to the buy-in. Everybody knows kind of their role. Everybody kind of knows the goal of whatever it is you're explaining. I don't get anywhere with the females, and it doesn't matter what age or what, whether it's Team Alberta, whether it's, Pee Wee A, if you are from the beginning, starting with why we're doing things, I find that, that kind of collective buy-in seems to become a little bit easier.
Thanks, Laura. Thomas, I don't know that we even asked why coaching the females at the Oval.
I think you were very good at that. And for me, coaching the women's game made me a better coach, just because of what Laura was just explaining it, because I learned, first of all, again, going back to Dave, you and George Kingston, you were the first guys that taught me that every drill has to have a teaching point. I'm not just running a drill without any purpose. So there was always 1 or 2 teaching points to every single drill. And then, of course, as Laura indicated, women want to have a detailed knowledge about why we are doing certain things, not just on the ice, away from the ice, on the bench, why we are running certain systems or philosophies.
Thomas, go ahead with your thought process and Dave's thinking and what questions you might have.
Dave, I want to go back a little bit to the Russians and the Czechs because you indicated last time when you spoke, and I found it very interesting, that one of the strategies against the Russians was actually to keep the puck, to play puck possession game in the offensive zone when possible, and that it was not necessary that you would get the puck to the slot or get a scoring chance, but just keep the puck so that the Russians, when they go on a counterattack, would be a little bit more tired and not as dangerous. If you could speak about that, please.
Yeah, I'll tell you, a couple of years into my coaching, we had stressed all the time, get the puck to the net, get the puck to the net. And we took a lot of shots at times that were not great angle shots, and they would start their attack. And so we started to realize, we're starting their transition game by some of our attack principles, getting the puck to the net, bad angle shots, this kind of thing. And so I learned very quickly that, puck management reduces the time you have to defend. So if you can hold the puck, if you can strike, for sure. You can strike to the net, you've got to take that. But if you're, there's numbers back, you got layers of coverage, you can't get through it. Try to maintain possession, look for things, probe, try to find things, but be smart with the puck. And I think that was something we did against the Russians and the Czechs, because we just felt that we couldn't play a wide open, forceful attack all the time. When we could, we had to go for it. But I can tell you, so many games, Thomas, their best chances came off our best chances. We got a scoring chance. We went for it. We got 2 or 3 guys caught deep, and boy, transition, it was gone. And so we tried to hold the puck, make them stop in defensive zone coverage was one of our plans, so that if they started their attack, at least Makarov was standing still covering the slot. He wasn't swinging out, anticipating something, so like that. So we tried to play a little smarter. And certainly at times, I thought we had chances to go to the net and didn't, but there's always a little bit of limitations to everything you try. But one of the things when Laura was talking, that I wanted to mention, Thomas, and to everybody, one of the things about saying why, telling guys, people, players, why you do things is, I always felt it was going to be very important for the last half of the season. Before I would go in between periods, I just stand outside, and I always had the door of the dressing room. I had a little stopper, and it was always slightly open. I just stand there and I'd listen to the guys coach themselves. And I realized, okay, we're doing it right. Maybe we're not good enough, but they know what to do and they know why they're doing it. So I always felt I could go in and say, hey guys, I know what you're talking about, and I agree with that, and here we go. And so I just felt I wanted the team to learn to coach themselves a little bit, not just always rely on what I was saying. They had good ideas, they understood, and so that's why you teach why.
I would like to ask you, if it's okay with everyone, how your coaching style and teaching style evolved from university coach, Western Hockey League coach, then national team. And then, of course, I'm very curious what happened with you then as a head coach of the Flames. Mm-hmm. What adjustments did you have to make as a coach?
Yeah.
And as a person too, personal growth. And then, of course, you became later on assistant coach, not only with NHL, but also with the national team at the Olympics. So if you would carry us a little bit through the evolution of yourself, not only as a coach, but also as a person.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say would be, I wish when I started coaching that I could have been an assistant coach first, and then evolved to become a head coach. Because later in my career, when I was an assistant coach, I thought, this is amazing. This is the best job in hockey. mean, the guys want to talk to you. They're a little bit apprehensive about approaching the head coach possibly, but the assistant coaches, the lines of communication are always wide open. And you can have fun with the guys and socialize maybe more than as a head coach I did. So that's the first thing I would say. I'll take you back in my career. When I coached major junior hockey, Laura, way back, maybe your dad wasn't even born then, I don't know. Back in the 70s, it was really old school hockey. You know, I was in a league with people like Patty Janelle, Ernie McLean, and they were authoritarian guys, great coaches in their own way. And a big part of their coaching was, I wouldn't say it was intimidation, but to a certain degree, the players were very, very respectful, maybe even a little fear at times, because they demanded things to be done a certain way. So at that point in time, you're a little bit of a dictator, actually, and you kind of think that the players don't have enough answers, so you've got to provide them all. And you soon learn that isn't correct. And then I went to the University of Saskatchewan, Thomas, and I was very lucky to go to a program that had won 6 games in about, I think 6 games in 8 or 9 years. So I was like Santa Claus when I came in, because they wanted to change badly, and I represented that change. And I really found that's the most fun I had coaching, that and the national team, because you know, the players were so focused on trying to improve. They wanted to change this program, and they did. They did a terrific job. And so I learned a lot then about, you know, as a coach, you're part of the equation. You're not the biggest part of the equation. Everything will come from your players. You have to try to find a way to make them realize they can get more out of themselves. And if you can do that, that turn things around and really get going. So that was my biggest outcome, coaching the Huskies and working, you know, coaching against people like Claire Drake and George Kingston. Automatically, you were going to learn, because every time you played them, you saw so much that they had adjusted to your game, so you had to be on your toes. So I learned a lot there about, you know, being really alert to everything, making sure that you were aware that coaches were going to adapt and had to be one step ahead in your coaching. But I really learned the most important thing: players are the difference makers, not the coach. And then I went to the national team, and that was really interesting for me, because I had had a little bit of international experience, not a lot though. I had been gone to some seminars in Europe. The Huskies, we had toured Europe. I coached the national junior team, which is international competition, but I was still very much a novice. So I got George Kingston to work with us as an assistant coach. And he was phenomenal, because, I mean, this guy understood hockey very well. He had studied the international game, Thomas, and he brought so much to our coaching staff that it was really impactful for me. And I really learned a lot from George. And with the national team, it was interesting, because there was no parity. I mean, the Finns, Russians, Swedes were all better than us most of the time, especially the Czechs and the Russians. They were really a cut above us. The Swedes and the Finns, we could make it work, but against the Russians and the Czechs, the room for error was so small that it was hard to play them. And so I learned a great deal there about some of the importance of tactics. I mean, yes, your players are important. The environment you create is important, but tactically you have to be smart. And so I learned a couple of things. I learned one thing that I thought was really important, which was spacing on the ice when we played against the Russians and the Czechs. Balance, so that there was manageable space between defenders, yet we had enough balance that we could defend and attack. So our positioning was always so important on the ice, because with good positioning, good awareness, and good communication, you can defend more ice. When you don't have those things, you can't. And really, defending is easy. To me, you know, defending is simply numbers, layers, gaps, communication, anticipation, awareness. That's easy stuff to pick up. The offensive side of the game was more difficult. And I learned more. I learned a lot about, with the national team, about defending, Thomas, but I also learned a fair bit about attacking. A lot of it we just couldn't do. It was great stuff. The way they stretched and made these long lead passes, and the way they would stretch out and come back underneath to the puck. some of those things were concepts that were hard for players to get, and they were so natural to our Europeans. So I learned a lot about defending. I got a lot of great ideas on offense. Not all of them were applicable to our situation because we were always in a 6 or 7 month development program to get to the Olympics and things like that. So, and then going to the Flames was very interesting because when I went to the Flames, you have to understand where I came from. I came from the national team, which was, I was important enough that because I had some experience, players did want to listen to me and they did want to try to do things. And so when I went to the Flames, at first, I think I tried to teach too much. I can remember once talking about forechecking, for example. We had a meeting about forechecking, and I talked about, simple things like, all decisions are a function of distance. I talked about read your teammates as much as you read the opposition, pressure, recover, replace. The length of the pass determines whether that's required replacement, things like that. And I can remember looking out there and all these glassy-eyed players thinking, holy God, is this guy going to be like this? How long is he going to last here? I think they were glad it only lasted 3 years. Anyway, so I learned there that, the players know a lot, but still some guidance. They need some help, and you got to get them organized in a certain way. But I did learn one thing when I coached the Flames, Thomas, is that you have to give good players with some extraordinary skill and talent a chance to do that. Whatever you want to do tactically, can't imprison those guys and not allow them to do those things. So when you have a Theron Fleury and a Joe Newendike, they do things. I mean, Theo was going to skate by to the offensive side of the puck all the time. But 80% of the time, he was correct. And in those situations, he generated scoring chances. Now, and sometimes he didn't. We got scored on, but, you have to accept those things. So as you get to pro hockey, you realize you have to have a plan. You have to have everybody trying to play to the plan to a certain extent. Some guys are given some exceptional status because they have exceptional skill and drive. And the hardest thing in the game is to score. That's the hardest thing in the game, is to score. Defending is easy compared to scoring. And so your offensive guys, you got to give them a little latitude, a little extra. And I learned that with the Flames for sure. And that was a really good experience for me. I really thought that pro hockey was good. It was interesting to me, though, and Thomas, I'll tell you, my first observation, I remember we started playing preseason games my first year, and I expected the game to be faster. I'd seen it I'd seen a lot of TV, and I'd seen a lot of games, but I thought from behind the bench, maybe it would be, and it wasn't as fast as I thought it would be. And then, of course, I realized it's because interference was allowed. I mean, in those days, you could put your stick on a guy and hold him up, and it was flagrant. Flagrant. You could hold your pins for 15, 20 seconds in D-zone coverage. So the interference factor really slowed the game down. And when I look back at the playing the European teams, touch passing, the speed of the game, how the red line was not a barrier to them. They would the far blue line wasn't a barrier. They would straddle or shut down, whatever, and get a kick out or straddle across and find a seam. So, I learned a lot from the Europeans. That I took some of those ideas to the Flames with, especially forechecking. When I worked on forechecking in the NHL, I realized I learned so much about forechecking from the international game that we started to teach a lot about when to forecheck aggressively and when to contain. And at first, the guys, that was the Jacques Lemaire was starting to trap a little bit in New Jersey because he had played for he had played for a Swedish coach in Switzerland who played a 1-3-1 kind of structure. And Jacques learned that in that system, and he brought it to the NHL. And I was doing a lot of contained forecheck, aggressive forecheck, reading the situation. So that's one of the things that was a little bit of difficulty to get the players to buy into. But all of a sudden, they're smart players. They realized, this is very interesting, they realized when they contain forecheck, they don't have to work as hard. And so I was caught in that trap, my own trap, pardon the pun, because they wanted to always trap. I said, whoa. When it's appropriate, we got to forecheck. We just don't trap. We got to forecheck when we can. So those are the pitfalls and the fun you get coaching. But they were great lessons for me, and I really enjoyed the fact that my coaching careers had so much variability to it. That's been really very satisfying for me.
If I may continue on a specific, more of a tactical question.
Yeah.
Weak side defenseman and a weak side winger. The evolution on breakouts, now we call it exits. Things are, all the same, but we have different names. So on the exit, on the breakout, the evolution, because what we have seen in the last few years in the NHL, the importance of weak side defensemen on the breakout, from defensive zone coverage, from controlled breakout, but also the weak side winger. So your experience in all these levels, what did you experience? How did you teach it? How did you coach it? I know you mentioned it in the book, for example, the Russians stretching vertically first and then going horizontal. Your experience on that part of the game.
Well, it's a very interesting part of the game, Thomas, because the one interesting thing about coaching, we all know, is it's a bit of a copycat profession. So, if somebody finds a way to break out of their zone that's unique, everybody decides, okay, we should do the same thing because it's successful. So everybody has, what happens is a lot of teams play the same, I guess is what I'm saying. The NHL team, the styles of play, PK, power play, 5-on-5, it's almost exactly the same from team to team. A little bit of difference, some variations, but it's very similar. So what I learned about the weak side defenseman and weak side forward, first of all, I can remember watching videotape, and it just struck me. I froze the tape. It was like God had come down and said, stop the tape. So I stopped the tape, okay? And I started to count the players. And there was 8 or 9 players on one half of the ice vertically. The other half of the ice vertically there was one defenseman on each team in those areas. Everybody else, because teams steer, they stay up and they lock the middle on the forecheck. That's the most common forechecking system we have. Okay, teams to break out, they have the offside winger slash skate. But what they forget is the weak side or offside winger, it's not an automatic slash skate. If the center is present in the middle lane, stay wide. Or you can veer a little bit to the middle, but you're still going to a little bit more to the wide side of the ice. So you have balance. You have people in 3 lanes, not in 2 lanes. If you watch a lot of games now, teams will come out of their breakout, they'll come out and they'll have the center and the offside winger almost shoulder to shoulder. In the middle lane, you've got that winger who got the pass from the D-man, and he's got somebody in his face. So that's why the offside defenseman, the weak side defenseman became important, because you could find him late underneath, and he became a really viable option. And it's one that's used a lot, and it's really effective. It's hard to defend against. But the key for the breakout is for coach, and it's not an automatic slash skate. If the center's present, why would you duplicate what he's doing? Stay wide. Or if you do slash skate and you realize suddenly he is there, flare wide again. Or the other solution is, if the center is behind that slash skating winger, he has to fill the outside lane. He has to realize he's ahead of me. He has priority. I'll take the wide ice. Got to get some attack width. And one of the things we're doing now in our game on the rush attack is we're attacking 2-on-3, 3-on-4. It's just numbers back. And so we chip and forecheck. Chip it behind, and that's okay. That's what you have to do. You have no choice, because you'll turn the puck over. So we generally play the game now vertically on half the ice. A lot. There's a lot of, we might as well play on a very narrow rink, because we're playing into numbers. We just play smart against numbers. Chip it and get it behind, slash skate through, put pressure on the puck. And so that's the game. And I think we have to be very careful. When I watch the KHL, it's amazing how many teams forecheck, you steer, you stay up, you lock the middle on your aggressive forecheck. So if you don't give some misdirection, if you can't get the puck to the weak side D, or change with misdirection, change the breakout from side to side, you're going to play into numbers. And so their game with all these skilled players, it's chip and chase, win the race, ta-da-ta-da, off we go. So for me, it's a little frustrating. And I think you have to teach your defensemen, if they have time and separation, give some misdirection. You know, quick change, quick turn back, change of direction. Can you use your partner for a quick reverse? You know, you have to do some things, I think, and somebody's going to be innovative soon to help us in this dilemma that we're in, because we're just attacking numbers against numbers, and we chip and chase, and off we go. So that's my story.
I wanted to
Yeah.
go back a number of years. Thomas, your question.
Yeah.
And Sammy, welcome aboard, because from our era when I was coaching, Danielle Sovacho was the first one that introduced to me our team, coming, moving the puck up the overload side to the winger, but going across to the weak side D. She deliberately practiced that back in that era because we were overloaded, and it worked. That was where the open space was to give you time to advance up the ice. Tom, you've been talking about your U13 team and overloading and counter pinching with the high winger. There's all kinds of different strategies going on, but Thomas, I find the ability to use the ice, where's the open space, create space with evasive maneuvers. When you have the pucks, you have time to execute, and then players have to read off that. And well, the role that coaches play in it, I think players see the ice and may invent things to do before we realize what's possible. And I'm really interested in the tapping into the players' IQ and learning from them a little bit more in our day. So, Sammy, I don't know if you got to join along, and Thomas, you keep your questions in mind because Dave gets rolling on them. I'd really love to hear it. But Sammy coming in now and having been through Olympics and worked the female side, now broadcasting the competitive side. I think there's a lot of parallels in the game now, and we're still trying to get faster and quicker in thinking at the female side. But any observations, Sammy, and any questions for Dave?
I just wanted to say a quick hello, and amazing. I could listen to you guys all day. This is incredible. So I feel like we get to hear from Wally all the time, and now we know, I feel like it's just all the same perspective. But what I love about it is just the inquisitive mind and always wanting to learn in that growth mindset. So I just appreciate this and love hearing you guys play off each other. So just keep this up. This is amazing.
Thomas, go ahead.
Dave, a concept that is like a lost art to me, and I attribute it to the skill development coaches. When we work with young kids, it's all about working individually with the puck. So we have a lot of skilled individuals now, individual players, but we don't have players who can support the puck offensively. The art of timing, arriving on time, being an option more than once. And I quote Dave King and George Kingston and Wally Kozak, being an option more than once, has gotten lost. And it's one of our priorities now in development. With the Maple Leafs, we find young players coming in, a lot of individual skill, but not being able to put the skill in the context of the game.
Yes.
And second player, third player, fourth player of the puck, the proper behavior, proper spacing, timing, arriving at the right time, leaving the good ice in front of you or beside you, wherever you want to have it. If you can elaborate on it a little bit, I think female game, same thing, same experience. Mm-hmm. Sammy will probably agree. Let's talk about offensively about the players away from the puck.
Okay, well, first of all, I would say I liked your comments about skill. We have a lot of skill coaches. I read from a soccer. I read a soccer book back a few years ago, and the guy he differentiated. He talked about it was something in Holland. I forget the fellow's name, and he was a Dutch coach, and he said there's a difference between skill and technique. He said we have technique coaches that teach the techniques of handling the ball, dribbling, deking, all those things, but we need somebody that can teach it. You have to learn it, but be able to apply it to the game, and then it becomes a skill. It's a technique. We have technique coaches. They're not skill coaches. They teach techniques. When they start to build it into the context of playing the game, it does become a skill, because it's not a skill if it can't be used in the game. So I like that. I thought it was a very good statement by that soccer coach. I guess for me, offensive hockey, it's really simple. It's a simple game. It's first to the puck, strong on the puck, support the puck, smart with the puck. So when I talk to coaches, those are the four things I always talk about. But it's support the puck is a very interesting concept. Whether we're talking now about the neutral zone or the offensive zone or the defensive zone, we always talked about closest man, provide close and quick support. And then the term got changed to second man quick support. And second man quick support, in my opinion, is the most critical concept in offensive hockey, because it gives you possession. And once you have possession, then you can do some things. So to me, for example, if you look at a forecheck, we get the puck behind the D. Our first man is there to pressure the man getting the puck. We stop the puck, or semi-stop the puck for a second. If our second man quick can beat their second man quick, we win the puck. And so now we've gone from forecheck to offensive zone play. So that second man quick links forechecking to offensive zone play a lot of times in a game. Defensively, it's the same thing. The play comes into our zone. If our closest man gets there and stops or semi-stops the puck, if our second man quick beats their second man quick, we get the puck, Thomas. So we're going from D zone coverage to breakout, from breakout to rush. If we save our ice, time our breaks into open space, support the puck, but don't crowd the puck carrier, we're on our way. So second man quick support for the puck is really, really the critical concept, because it seems to link everything together. The other part of it, though, is you're right. Timing is such an important aspect. When I talk to players about support, I always say, like, how much separation does he have? Because if he has separation, don't get too close. Let's think about spacing here. But if he's under pressure, we got to get closer. So it's how much checking pressure he's under that dictates to you how close you have to be to him. Sometimes spread, leave him, create more space for him. So those are the kind of things we have to really work on. And that's why I think it goes back to working with young players in small area drills or small area scrimmages. I think these are the concepts you can start to work on a little bit. Like 3-on-3 hockey is a most amazing teaching situation. When I was coaching with the national team, that was our D zone coverage. Most of it was on 3. We played that way, 3-on-3 cross ice. So you can do a lot of things with small ice work that I think teaches some of those concepts. Some players will never get it because for some reason, and many times it's because they skate too well, they overskate, they get in the way, they leave too early, they're not available. So it's funny, I found some of the best players aren't the fastest. It's because they aren't fast. They learn to save their ice. They learn to time themselves into open ice. They learn about the importance of support, and they know they need it when they've got the puck. So, these are all concepts that are very interesting. And I think one of the parts of the game, Thomas, I talk a lot with my guys is the next play. Moving down getting out of your zone, moving down the ice, and the object of the game is to score. And scoring is, can we make play? Play depends often on support, whether it's post support or it's stretching support that spreads things out. Those are the kind of things we have to work on with young players. And I've always felt You practice and drills to do that. You can play cross ice or small area hockey, but that's where the help is video. I've really found with young players a little video to show them themselves. And okay, here's what were you thinking? What did you do? What else could you have done besides that? That to me is where they learn the game. And so the game should become the teacher, ideally. But next play is the third man support. If A is passing to B, C's got to be thinking about moving for B. And then once A moves the puck to B, C is supporting, A's got to get back in action again. So that third man support idea is really important. And again, I found video has always been very helpful to me to get kids to think about that without getting too complex. You still got to do all this with young players in a simple way, as simple as you possibly can. And that's where the art of coaching becomes really critical, because that's the best teachers are the guys that can teach it the simplest.
Dave, I just wanted to get Tom involved here because Tom has worked with Johanny Wilson, who you know, and he had 4 principles of play, which allow you to think about the game, especially the transition game, defense or offense. When I was writing the female curriculum back in late 2007 to 10, I came up with a statement about playing defense is knowing when and how to pressure and when and how to contain.
Yeah.
And offense is really creating time and space and playing proactively by your movements, your speed, your deception. But defensive skating and playing is reactive. It's according to what you see, and the idea of slowing up relative to situations is critical. Now, Tom, could you mention the 4 points that you've had in your book on the thinking principles? It's quite simple, and I think it's so simple, in fact, we may have forgotten about the importance of simplicity.
Tell you the truth, Wally, I can't think exactly about what you're asking here.
Well, in his book, he had the book I gave out is 4 principles of having the puck, not having the puck having the puck on offense, not having it on defense.
Well, you mean the 4 playing principles?
Yeah,
4
They're the
game
4
playing roles?
yeah.
Roles, not principles. Roles.
4 roles, yeah. Yeah, well, on offense, you've got to work on the skills when you have the puck, and then supporting the puck like Dave was just talking about, you know, the second, third, fourth, fifth player. And on defense, the closest player checking the puck carrier, you have all those skills to concentrate on, and then covering away from the puck, whether it's man-on-man or zone. And that's basically what the whole how you organize, how you coach, and how the game really is. And then there are 3 situations you're in. You're either on offense or you're on defense. And one thing that a lot of coaches don't coach very much is about 30% of the game, about 18 minutes every game, the puck is loose. So, you know, you have all those principles of how you read the play when the puck is loose. And some guys anticipate, some guys play in the offensive side, right? And some teams are always the defensive, and the real great players, they kind of recognize what's going to happen next. And you get the puck there available because they've read that you're going to get the puck, you know. So those are the basic principles that Yuso talked about.
Thomas, any other thoughts?
You spoke about the NHL, Dave. Right now, basically, we have 10 players on the strong side, and it's more of a chip, tip, deflection, lobbing out, puck to space, not puck to tape, kind of a hockey game. Where do you see will be the next? Where is the game going, in your opinion? Or like you said, like if somebody's gonna get creative, how are they gonna get creative? What do you think the game needs more?
Well, like the game is interesting. 80% of the game, or more than 80% of the game now, is played in the end zones. And that a lot of the change in the game, the way we're playing it now, is because of the rule changes. Back in 1999, 2000, they started to introduce rule changes to the game. And one of them was to make the end zones both 4 feet deeper and make the zone 8 feet reduced. And so suddenly it became paramount to get through that middle zone. It was like it was a pain in the ass. Just get through it. So the long indirect pass, chip it behind. No red line did help a little bit to make the zone a bit more useful. But, when they make rule changes like that, they have to understand the coaches will adapt. Coaches will adapt, and that's exactly what's happened. I mean, you see the long cycles now in the offensive zone. Sometimes you'll see a cycle for a minute and a half, sometimes 2 minutes in a zone, and the other team just plays, protect the house, stay inside, and then shot blocking became paramount. Because of the bigger zones, everybody said the only thing we can do then is get in shot lanes. So now everybody, when I coached in the NHL, I first started there were a few shot blockers. We had Chris Dahlquist, we had Frantisek Musil. They were shot blockers. But you knew you had 1 or 2 shot blockers. Now everybody blocks shots. It's because of the tactics we're playing. When you play these defensive zone coverage where you fall back and protect and get block shots, and then you counterattack off the shot block. You got to get to the puck, capture the puck, and then you got to get going. So puck retrievals become important. But it's really interesting. I had a talk once, maybe a year and a half ago, with Scotty Bowman, and we were talking about the game today. And Scotty said he didn't like the game today because the rules he thought were restrictive. He thought changing the dimensions of the ice was not a good idea. He had no problem with no red line, but he even favored a little bit having the red line back. So no matter what we do, you'll adjust your tactics to compensate and react to it and find a way to win. We all do. That's what coaches do. We always screw up the game. Do you notice that? Coaches do that. We find ways to get in the way. But anyway, get off that topic. I've always felt if they really want to, when the referee started to apply the rule book, that's when the game got faster. Yes, the players are more fit now, Thomas, than ever before. And they skate. There's more classic skaters than ever before. But when you have no red line, you have no interference, you have one touch passing, you have guys with speed, the game is going to be faster. And that's why the game is faster. And there's a rush to get through the middle zone. That's why the game gets faster. Long indirect passes that can be chipped. That's what we want to do because it keeps us fast. So there's a real emphasis on playing fast. And that's good. I understand that because speed, if you make a mistake, it's a big factor. So if somebody makes a wrong read or the wrong technique, something happens. If you're fast, you're going to get a good scoring chance. So, the game has changed a great deal. I have always felt that I don't mind the no red line. I wouldn't mind seeing the end zones getting back to where they were because that allows defensive zone coverage to be quicker. So offensively, to counteract that, you're going to have to be more direct at times, get maybe not a wide open shot lane, but you're going to have to get pucks to the net. And when the puck gets to the net, fans get in their seats and they get anxious because that's good. So we've got to think it's entertainment. So I'm not sure we shouldn't go back to keeping no red line, but make the neutral zone bigger. Now
that would also mean that the point shots would be more dangerous.
Yes.
We would be closer to the net, which we want to with our defensemen now. The most successful D-men in the NHL in terms of points and goals, they don't shoot from the blue line. They are trying to get to the top of the circles.
That's right. And really, how many one-time shots from the blue line do you see anymore? When I had Al McInnes, we'd get it across the top of him and for the one time, and that was a big part of our offensive zone play. because we knew if he had even a close to a shot lane, he was going to blast it. And so we were always, if he gets going to the, looking for pucks, we're going to quick putbacks, we're going to score on the rebound or the loose puck. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that the game is becoming quite similar. And I don't know, when I watch these long cycles in the offensive zone where it's possession, I don't know. And it's just interesting for you. I watched the KHL game about a month ago, and I saw the longest in the history of hockey in one zone. I saw over 5.5 minutes, one team in their zone, and they couldn't get it out, and the other team didn't score. I couldn't believe it. I'm watching thinking, it's got to get out pretty soon. And they didn't. They went over 5.5 minutes in the offensive zone, and they bumped the puck. They moved. They slid a forward high, played 3-on-2. But the other team got in shot lanes. The goalie was good. No one got caught out of position. They just contained the inside of the ice. And it wasn't fun to watch. But it was interesting because it went 5.5 minutes. 5.5 minutes. God, that was unbelievable. Like, that could happen in the. So, I like the game to be. I like it to be a little more vertical, and that's why I wish the zones were smaller, so there'd be a shot, puck retrieval, boom, you got to defend. You've gone from attack to defense real quick. I think that transition game is still the most exciting part of our game, and maybe the rules have taken some of that away because teams are so smart now. We all have numbers back. We all have layers to our defense. It's just the way it is. Positioning has never been better, so that it's not easy to score.
I think the best line in hockey 2 years ago was the Flames line of Tkachuk and Gaudreau and Lindholm, but they played differently than everybody else. Tkachuk was on the off wing there, he on the right side, and they did a lot of, they passed to him and then he fired it all the way across, and Gaudreau, instead of slashing it across, but right down the boards, and he pick up that power, he could pick up any kind of a pass. And they were the best line in the NHL there 2 years ago, but they played differently than everybody else. So just to your point of everybody overloading one side, they didn't do that, but they were really successful.
I was watching a game the other day. It's interesting. This is happening a lot in the KHL, and I do consult with a team, Locomotiv, Yaroslavl. And it's interesting. Quite common in their game now is a team will break out. And a lot of teams over there now play a 1-1-3. So they lock the left side with the forward. The one D plays in the middle. The other D shifts to the right side. And the two lead forwards are kind of in an eye. Pressure, recover, replace. Standard 1-1-3. And a lot of teams now will break out and they'll get across their own blue line. And then they slap the puck all the way down the ice. They're using the touch puck icing to their advantage. And they've found these spots on the boards where the puck will come out, and they just get out and they just whack it off a slap shot off the far boards. The goalie can't play it. And these rebounds come out, and of course, you're 3 back. They got to turn, and they're playing tight gap, which is what you want and what you're coaching to do. But they got to get on their horse because these guys are coming full speed, and the non-shooters are accelerating, and they're moving, and they'll beat the D to that puck. It's interesting tactics. So the game, it's interesting. There's always people finding ways. And so to answer your question, Thomas, about, I think that to get more use of the width of the ice, the net front D is very important, and that was a good one. I still think a lot of it's going to be in the hands of the defenseman because they have to do more misdirection. The free defenseman's got to really work for his partner. He just can't cruise back. He's got to hurry back. He's got to make sure creates something for his partner cross ice. And
Dave, I want to stay on the D-man. Sorry to jump in there because, of course, you're creating new thoughts here. I do find with a lot of teams still that the D-to-D support is sometimes too widespread. So if we do go D-to-D, we end up on the boards with the puck.
Yeah,
I would like to see D-man playing closer together. So when I get the puck D-to-D, now I am at the furthest on the dot line and not by the boards. And if I'm on the dot line, I can go back to the middle. I can go off the boards. I find sometimes the distance between D-man offensively supporting each other way too far.
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of defensemen, when they get the D-to-D pass, the only play I mean, you can throw it back inside, but you better be careful because you're in the wide ice and your pass is in the inside ice. So what you do is you chip it long off, indirect off the boards to a post-up guy, and they get the puck deep. To me, the free defenseman's always got to work from the middle of the ice. If my partner's retrieving a puck, outside the dots on his side, I want to be in the middle. So when we go D, I can buy time. I have ice to retreat if I have to. I have ice to pivot from backward to forward and start to advance the puck. But I've got position and where I've got ice in front of me. And so your point's a good point. But that free defenseman now, I really think that's where it's the net front D breakout option's a good one. Really good option. But we have to do more earlier than that if we can. Can we go over D to D? Can we go over D to D and back to the first D? It all depends about how much separation you have. But if you have enough separation, give misdirection. If they're right in your hip pocket, you don't have a lot of choices. I think sometime too, Thomas, if we're talking about the logic of this, sometime hockey may start to do what soccer has done, where the goalie starts the attack. If you watch the top European soccer teams,
yes,
go back to the goalie and he can't use his hands. If you pass it back to the goalie, he's got to use his feet. And there is a depth now as a forward with the ball. And they make the good quick pass and boom, that transition, it's away from numbers. It's into some open space. Yes, they have some faux pas and they do give up some goals. But we may see our goalies become, I think even now in the second period, our goalies should be more active than they are at playing.
So this is going back to when you were coaching and I was watching a pregame skate of the Detroit Red Wings playing you that night. And you guys were in the 1-2-2 wedge. You used to call it wedge forecheck.
Yeah.
And they did D-man to the strong side winger and strong side winger back to the goalie.
Yeah.
They were practicing it. I don't know if they did it in the game.
Yeah.
But just to your point, this is 30 years ago now. But I think it was Scotty Bowman actually coaching back then in '94, if I'm not mistaken, the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned the goalie, I've seen it once being done.
I think in the futuristic part of our game, the goalies are going to be more active. And you hear rumors about the NHL starting to change, and maybe the first and third periods will be long, and the second period will be your close change. If they do that, that's another way to affect the attacking part and the offensive part of our game, Thomas, is to have the first and third periods long changes. And because if that happens, the goalie should be taught courage to get out and when it's appropriate. And I don't know why. There, he gets the puck. We have this trapezoid which contains the goalie a little bit. I think in the game today, with the amount of speed we have, I wouldn't mind seeing the goalie have to take a little bit of risk because it might generate some more offense.
Hey, what do you think of that as a goalie?
It's interesting. If anybody watched the rivalry series game last night, Henry Desbiens likes to play the puck a lot, but I feel like is maybe not as strong as she needs to be in that situation. So it bit them in the butt one time when Jocelyn Larocque was on the flank, but not ready for the pass. And it would have been an easy breakout, but got picked off and then the Americans scored. So I love it. I think that it needs to be a conversation. We were talking about what sort of the next iterations of hockey could be. And I think the conversation between the goalie and the players, including a 6-person team rather than a 5-person team, I think is very intriguing. So the goalie starting the breakout on a rebound, for instance, and goalies now are being taught how to rebound so that you're rebounding in the right position so that you are starting the breakout versus down into the corners, which is a very different mindset than what we went through. So I think looping everybody in, because goalies are starting to think this way, but I don't know that coaches necessarily are. So yeah, I think people are ready for it. It just needs to be a conversation between the entire staff.
It's interesting if you look at the goalies' equipment now. You know, the goalie skates they have now, they're more mobile than ever before because of the skate that they've adapted. Whereas the old days with the flat blade and the big heavy skates, you know, goalies didn't move well. Now they skate so well that I think we're going to find down the road somewhere, we're going to get the goalies more involved in starting attacks when it's appropriate. And we may even find D-men at times throwing it back to the goalie so the D can both flare wide. You got to trust your goalie. And all of a sudden, it happens now on some breakouts where the goalie stops the puck behind the net, he keeps it, and both D release. But we may find more of that in front of the goalie, where the D release to the hash marks, for example, and the goalie plays the puck. The center comes back, and now you have four people involved in the breakout, not the normal three. Normally, we have two defensemen and a center working low. This way, with a goalie, you'd have four back there. Center coming low, close. The wingers D releasing to the hash marks, and the goalie playing the puck. It's going to be interesting to see where, I don't know. I'm always off base.
I just wanted to chime in here. When I was helping Tom with the U18 female team, we developed a breakout progression that began with each goalie on each side of the net making the breakout passes to the low winger, just so they would come into the corner to the goal line depth, face the puck, and do an ego pivot, target with one hand, and away they go. And then when we taught center timing and whatnot, but the goalie, Tom's goalie in that year, I remember winning the provincial championship. Pucks would be dumped in, they retrieved it. The forwards automatically set up higher when there was space.
Yeah.
And the puck was moved to them because we practiced that.
Yeah.
They get the puck. First thought is, back in your day, Sam, we said, make sure you exaggerate what you're doing. You're going to pass. Don't be fidgeting about maybe I will, maybe I won't. So it's that body language of which allows the players to think support. And what Tom's team did there was exactly that. The goalie is the first pass, and you can gain a lot of space. That winger doesn't have to come down the goal line. He might be able to stop at the blue line.
But also the next level too, Wally, is not being so readable with your pass. So now goalies being deceptive with their pass. Wally, the clinic I saw you at in Calgary, the high performance goalie clinic that I went to, France Jean, I think is this, the goalie coach for Tampa Bay, was talking about Vasilevsky, and that they work continuously on him making the first save and putting it into open space so that his players can sort of circle on it, but to not be readable and be deceptive, just like any other player on the ice. And he does it really well, but also being he said, the king of the 5-foot pass. Like, you don't have to make the 30-foot pass. You have to make a really great 5-foot pass, and your players you have to practice it like anything else, I guess. Anyways, I just usurped this whole call and made it all about goalies. So we can go back to all other things. That's enough goalie stuff now.
Dave, I have a question about coaching, on bench coaching, bench management.
Yeah.
And first of all, were the Russians quite easy to get your matchups in? Did they care about certain matchups, or were you able to dictate even when you played, even when you were not the home team, were you able to dictate what players you're going to get on the ice against Makarov, Larionov, Krutov, and those guys?
Yes, it was very easy to get the matchup, Thomas. They never, I'm making this comment and don't want to be not complimentary to our team, but very few of our players could make their team. So they didn't care who played out against who, because they knew they were better. So yeah, we could get our matchups, and that was a big help to us to always have the right matchups. And then besides that, we would play lines differently. Like when we played Makarov, Larionov, and Makarov, we played the game subtly, really, like our forechecking game was such that we were never going to get two players trapped by one pass against the Makarov line. We would designate somebody to be always the high forward, and we would designate this guy. You are the high forward when you play against this line. You are, unless we have the puck, you're not going down there below the top of the circles. You're going to always respect the fact that they're a quick transition group. We want minimum 3 back, so you could get your matchup. Yep.
What's your attitude on matchups, and how did it evolve being a pro coach with the Flames and then assistant coach? What is your experience? Would you match up the whole 5? Would you match up only D pairings? Would you match up the forward line? I mean, there's so many ways of matching up. But what is your experience? And looking back at it now, would you change anything?
Well, I think matchups, I would first of all say, and I think everybody here knows that, it's very frustrating for your team at times, matchups, because a smart coach on the other side will double shift his top guys. And so somebody's getting left out on your team, and they're not happy about that. And I always found 5-on-5 matchups were very frustrating to a lot of our players that wanted their ice time. They wanted rhythm to their game. And to be good, they had to have rhythm to their game. And so I've always, our thoughts were, Thomas, we would do it with our defensemen. If we couldn't get the forward, ideally, against the Makarov line, we wanted to get the full 5. But that was the only line we needed the full 5. And then later on, when the Russians became a little more generic with their attack and all 4 lines were kind of the same, we would go with defense matching up against what we thought were the top lines. And so that's the way we did it. And by doing that, you're kind of ticking off 4 other defensemen possibly, but you're not ticking off 9 forwards. So it was strictly mathematics, and it was still effective. That's what we tried to do. We tried to, you have to match up against some of the top people because, and now it's interesting because now a lot of teams match up offense against offense, and some teams match up defense against offense. So there's various ways to do it. You can do it tactically. Those are decisions a coach has to make. But I've always been a believer in trying to match up, mainly because when I coached the national team, like I said, we had mismatches. We knew that were there, and we had to make sure we kind of camouflaged that. In the NHL, I still found some nights we could go offense against offense. Some nights it was no way. We had to go offense against defense against offense.
Would you speak with your players about it before the game? Would they know about it? Would you try that they understand, like we talked about understanding? Would you get the buy-in from them?
Yeah, we would talk to our team always before the game about what the matchup was going to be and then how we were going to change. You had to make sure that your changes were crisp and smart, that the defenseman, for example, bench side D would change first. The D coming on would go to the wide side of the ice. The other guy had to hold the ice until he got there, but you had to make sure you had smart line changes positionally so you were always sound. Because every time you match up, there is a moment when you are sometimes in difficulty. If guys start to make the change before too soon and they're getting to a puck, you can suddenly get caught with that long transition play. And so you had to be really alert. It took practice to do it, and we would do that. But I always was kind of a believer in trying to make sure we were sound on the ice. And then if we got caught in a mismatch, we always told our goalie, cover. If it's even close, cover the puck. We'll take the face off. Cover the puck. Play the off the glass and out game if we have to. If you haven't got a good play defenseman, it's up and out. So we had ways to get caught in a mismatch and still survive. The guys understood that. And for the most part, the guys understood, hey, they had respect for the opposition and they knew they were good. In the NHL, it's always more difficult because the NHL players, they don't want to play reactive. They want to play proactive. Like if you coach guys like Theron Fleury, Gary Roberts with the Flames, they never wanted to know what the other team was doing. We're going to play our game against them. And they did. And they did it well. So as a coach, you know that Joel Otto, Paul Ranheim, they want to hear from you. They want to know all about that team because they're more of that. They want to have the comfort of preparation. Gary Roberts and Theron Forey was, we'll smack those guys around. We'll go so damn hard they won't be able to stay with us. And that was their strategy. And I liked it. So I learned to adapt to that too because, hey, some guys just don't want to. They don't care how good they are. It's how good we are.
I'm not gonna say what team it was, but with one of the NHL teams I was working with, the players always hated when we had a pregame meeting and the coach would show the logo of the other team. And they were like, I don't want to be looking at somebody else's logo here. Like, they were already getting upset.
Yeah.
Watching the other team. It's the nature of the top athlete that they want to be the dominant one, in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's they're. I found most players, not most players, some players didn't want any pregame meetings. They didn't feel they were needed. A lot of players like to know, and the art of coaching is keeping those meetings short, the message succinct, and don't forget to talk about your own team, how good we are. Don't just talk. I was guilty at times because of the coaching against the Russians so much. I got always prepared for the other team, and sometimes I forgot about our team.
Dave, what is your experience today with players? Everybody has their own strength coach. Everyone has their own skills coach. Everyone has their own psychologist. Everybody is on social media. Now they have coaching staff of 6 coaches. There's so much information coming down to that one player. What is your experience with that? How to sort it out? I just find a lot of the players I work with, my biggest job is to find out whether he even wants the information or not. If my information, if I'm not duplicating or saying the same thing for the 3rd or 4th or 5th time. So a lot of wisdom and patience is required in my job because there's so much information available. And plus, players have their own private coaches that they are still in touch with during the season. What is your experience with that, and what do you think about that?
Well, I know now that coaching is much more difficult than it was back when I was a head coach in the NHL. At one time, you had agents were really the only, and maybe parents to a little bit of the extent, but not at our level of hockey would they be much of a factor. But the wives sometimes wanted to coach too, as well. So we've got to remember that. But it's difficult. It just indicates to me.
And maybe they were the best coaches, right? That's where you were going with that.
Yeah, it's the difficulty in the coaching now. It's so difficult because you have so much information about the game. Between periods, you have your printouts coming on possession and shot charts, and you've got tons of stuff to look at with the analytics. You've got 4 other coaches on your staff that want to talk to you. On the off days, you got the nutritionist, you got the sports psych, you've got it's unbelievable. So now the coaching is very, very complicated and very, very difficult. And I think one of the things for coaches is to park you got to keep yourself charged up, energized. Too much information can de-energize you. You just get overloaded with too many opinions, too many cooks in the kitchen. So it's really important to have the information. What do you feel is important to you? Prioritize that. Some of the other stuff, you may not even read it in terms of the analytics, because there's some that's very valuable, but there's some that's just too much information. To me, I was always, especially with the Coyotes, I told this story the last time I was on. I remember we got to the point where between periods, the head coach would dash into his office, get all the analytics. We'd never get time to talk. And I remember going to him, because I was the old guy on the staff, saying, hey, whoa, we should, we still got to use our instincts a little bit. We still have guys with good opinions. We see the game. I know the analytics are good there, but, can we not find a couple of minutes to talk before we go and talk to the players? And so I think you got to be really careful here. There's a lot of influences on the player, which make it very difficult for the coach, Thomas. And I don't know if there's going to be a solution other than your ability to prioritize what is important to you. Sit down with the player, and if you think it's getting too complicated, you got to talk to the player, and you got to say, look, I don't think we're communicating really well. Let's talk it out here. You've got some opinions. Who are you getting them from? What do you think of their credibility, your credibility? I mean, you've got to, all you can do, and the most important thing to do is get good people.
Yes.
Get good people, because good people still see a bigger picture, and they still tend to understand they are a puzzle. They're not the whole puzzle. And
yes,
but boy, it's complicated, Thomas. I haven't got a good answer for you because I don't know. That's a really complicated topic. I've got a son who coaches in Major Junior now with Moose Jaw, and he tells me, a lot of things that happen with his players in terms of all the information they're getting from so many people. And they have skills coaches, they have everything, and they're junior players, and these are people that are not part of your staff, and they might not agree with the way you're playing, and so they plant ideas sometimes that are counterproductive. And
yes,
as a coach, you have to know that it's going on. You just got to deal with it, and that's the most important thing you can do in coaching today. Is you and your staff is to create a good environment.
yes,
Because if it's a positive environment, I think a lot of guys start to buy in, start to understand a bit better where things are going, where they fit in. But that's the most important thing about coaching today is the environment you create. You have to know the game, but the best results come from the best environment.
yes. Thank you, Dave. It's a complicated, not easy question. It's not easy.
No.
I'd just like to interject here. It's an art, and one of my friends has written a book, Ray Paras, and he refers to the art of coaching as doing the right stuff, the right amount, the right time. And he added to that the right way. And with all this information going on, it can be distractive. At getting people to be on the same page as an organization within the organization is important, most important. And then how you deal with the outside. I think that by building a relationship with your players of trust and respect and asking them more than telling them and seeing what their process is. I really believe that coaching has changed from being coach direction to coach attentiveness and being able to engage his players or her players by asking questions at the right time. And, as simple as it may seem, I'm doing HP evaluations, and I want the coaches to ask each other 2 questions. What did we do well? What do we need to do better? And then ask the players the same questions.
Yeah.
And the head coach filters that to, okay, here's what we want to do moving forward. But by our era of coaching, it was go in and tell them everything you thought they needed to know, and they probably know much more than we do from our vantage points. And it's sort of like that Janelle era and that old school era of my way, the highway, north-south hockey.
Yeah.
The game's changed so much that the players, I think, they're keeping up with it because they're on the ice and they're living it, and they're getting more skill work than I could ever give them or we could ever give them ourselves.
Yeah.
So taking advantage of that is going to be the way of the future. I just wanted to say, Dave, and this may be too simple, but we have 2D and 3 forwards. You line up for a face-off. After that, it's wherever the puck is, you're 1, 2, 3, 4-5 now.
Mhm.
So sometimes when you're looking at some of the offensive players that, like Hughes and others that get involved in the offense, they're part of the rush, they're part of the first pass on the breakout, and there's an interchange of positions. And I think players are getting more comfortable, and hockey's becoming more 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with all the new complex tactics going on. And I think players can digest that, process that, make decisions. Quite simply, it's a matter of vision and movement and trusting and respecting your teammates. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know whether it's too revolutionary in thinking, but I don't think the Russians back in our day interchanged positions, but they sure did use each other and move the puck and played at a higher speed than we ever did. And we evolved with a defensive focus to our coaching. I know I did, and to this day, I'm still caught up in that thought process of teaching defense in order to get the puck and attack. So, any other thoughts out there? Laura, you've listened a lot. Tom sitting back, and I wrote down a number of questions, Dave, before you got on. The difference between hockey today and hockey back in the day.
Yeah.
And now you can even throw the KHL, European hockey, into that mix.
Mhm.
What are the differences? What have we got to learn from the differences? Are there things we still need to do? Are there things we have to learn to do better because the game is changing?
Well, we're in a game now of where we just talked about it before. Every player now has got so many consultants giving him information beyond his parents that the game is getting more complicated for the individual. Back in the day, there was more informal learning. Like when we played, here we go, folks. When we played shinny, cross ice on the outdoor rink in our shoes, not our skates, with sticks we called toothpicks because the blades were all broken blades and very thin. You learned that because of that thin blade, you had to handle a tennis ball very quickly. You had to learn to take a slash, give a slash, no referees, protect the puck. You learned how to use your hands, very, very well. So the informal part of learning the game, I think we do now. There's so much formalized learning. We have hockey academies. There's still a few hockey schools, but more and more now the academies have moved into all that. We have summer tournaments. We have all these things that are complications and all formalized, organized learning for the young guys and gals. I think we have to still give kids. I'll tell you a story, okay? With the national team, we started our practices always 2-puck, 11 versus 11. Because they got to play the game. For 7 or 8 minutes, they played the game. God, they were so happy. And we always played 2 pucks because you have to play 1 puck, but you got to be aware where the other puck is. So they learned a few things about awareness, positioning, but we weren't talking a lot about that. But they played for 7 or 8 minutes, and the talk was fantastic. The guys got into the practice. We didn't do stretching because they stretched in the dressing room. We played the game for 6 or 7 or 8 minutes. At some point during the practice, we'd always do something cross ice, small area, or we might do a 3-on-3 full ice or half ice. Again, because they should play the game. So you've got to combine some formal learning with some informal learning, if you can, because that's where the fun comes from. And I think they still develop a lot of important things playing informally, where like I say, 2-puck, 11 versus 11. It was great. Guys loved it. And their skills, it was crowded, it was traffic. They weren't quite sure if that guy was with me or against me in terms of colors. So it was really good stuff. And I think you have to do that. I think we rely so much now on instruction, and that model that I don't know sometimes if we haven't gone overboard with that, if we're not burning kids out so much that, you only love the game when you organize your own game, it's because you love the game. And so don't be afraid to let the guys play. Every practice, they got to play some, and they got to have some fun, and not too much feedback from the coach. Just shut up, enjoy it, and laugh, and have some fun. If you can do that, you create an environment that's good. And then when you do talk, they will listen. They're ready to listen to you. So it just takes some intelligence. That's all it does. And unfortunately, we got a very complicated, sophisticated game now. And I'll go back to another story for you. Sorry about this. When I did my book, Loose Pucks and Ice Pegs, I talked to a lot of guys that played in the minor professional ranks, not the NHL. And I said to them, tell me about coaching in those days. And the guy said, well, we were taught some things. Yeah, for sure. Like on the road, 1 man in, at home, 2 men in, things are very simple, but made a lot of sense. You had a home style, you had a road style. Okay. And I said, did coaches give you much feedback? No, not very much. They'd get mad at you once in a while. The place they learned the most was from their teammates, because your line mate, if say it's in the NHL and you're playing with a guy and you make a mistake, he's worried because he may get sent down too. You may get sent down, but in those days there was no guaranteed contracts. You could get sent down. So because there was a minor professional league, your teammates were coaches because how you played affected them and their survival in the game. So the game has changed now. It's all, there's more money, there's long-term contracts. You have to get, as I said earlier, you got to get good people as much as you can. And even that's going to be a challenge because there's a lot of factors involved in the game now that we can't control as coaches. We have to react to it, and we have to be able to be smart enough to find a way to compensate and make it work.
Dave, Dave, how much in the KHL are they using iPads on the bench and the players processing what's happened amongst themselves and coaching themselves in the process?
Yeah, the KHL is just like the NHL now. The style of game is very, very, very similar. Power plays and PK are exact. I mean, they started them with the Czechs, so it's their game. We've taken that, but they have iPads on the bench. They have large coaching staffs. The coaches coach. They don't just stand there like robots. They do coach, and so yes, their game is very sophisticated like ours. They play a lot of the same game, team to team. It's not a lot of difference. There are some that still play a little bit more of the Soviet style game where they skate a lot off the puck, but a lot of teams are very regimented to the NHL style game. So I should mention one thing too, Wally. I know somebody, a gentleman from Sweden, signed off on this call. I've coached. I coached in Russia, in Yaroslavl, for 2 seasons way back, and since then I've always worked with them. So this is not a money-making project. It just keeps me in love with the game. That's why I do it. It's so I'm sorry you lost one of your cohorts on your group there, but I do it because I like it and I love the game. So anyway, their game is very sophisticated. It's quite similar from team to team. And that's disappointing to me, to be honest with you. I can almost watch a game and predict my scouting report, what it'll look like. But I do try to find parts of the game to react to. Like the other day, I just did my whole presentation to the coaches after the game was over was on second man quick support, showing them clips where they won the second man quick race, what that led to in terms of their game. If they didn't win it, what it led to for the other team. And so I get a theme if I can, Wall, and try to do it that way as much as I can. And I'm all over the map with them, but I think it's good. It's because these are young coaches. 2 of them coached with me when I was over there, so that's kind of why I do it.
Dave, I'm curious here. Advice. You've coached minor hockey, you've coached minor sports in high school. What advice would you have for coaches of younger players, younger athletes, learning to coach, and trying to become elite coaches. And by that, I mean working with the best of young players.
I think it's a very good question, Wal, and I'm going to answer it if I can quite simply. Don't get too enamored with techniques, tactics, and those kind of things. Yes, you have to know the game. Yes, you have to be able to help the kids, the boys and girls, become better players. But you're working with people. They're going to make mistakes. What you have to do is help them as much as you can, have fun, and make sure they're having fun as much as you can. And if you do that, you'll get more accomplished. If you think you have to become a tactical wizard, you don't. The game is not that complicated for kids to play. Keep it simple, make sure it's fun, and smile. Smile lots and have fun. And just enjoy, make sure you enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, I'm sure the kids aren't enjoying it. And so I think it's really important that those are fundamental things. For children to go on and want to play the game, they have to learn to love the game. To learn to love the game, they have to have fun doing it. So that's your job. Your job is not a job, but your role is to help them have fun and help them learn, but make sure it's a balance. Make sure that you see the big picture all the time. Scoreboard means only something to the parents usually. To the kids, sometimes it does, but it depends upon the level. But, again, keep it fun as much as you can, and don't get too scientific.
Just a question for everyone on board. How do you, the challenge is the focus on outcomes. If you're not winning, well, you're not good enough as a coach, and the pressure is on. And how do you deal with that? Because I know when things are going well, everybody's happy. And if you're not winning, they're not happy. And happiness seems to depend on winning. And I think that there's a process to being able to win. But how do you get people to stay with the process as a team? And I don't mean just the players and coaching staff. I mean the parents. Anybody?
Well, I'll venture into that to start it off for us. I've always felt the hardest part about coaching is when the parents are driving home with their child, because I don't know what they're saying, but I'm sure sometimes they're not saying nice things. So they're implanting ideas in their child that you're some kind of a fool at times. But that's coaching. I mean, parents are you're dealing with their most valued possession, their children. And so even people with common sense can lose it. Coaching kids must be the most difficult part of coaching. I think when you coach adults, it's easier than it is coaching kids. And all you can do is try to, we all know, the preseason meeting with the parents, ice times, all those things. Just being smart, always having a smile on your face, things like that. Even if you don't feel that way, get the smile on your face. I think you have to try to deal with a very difficult situation. I don't know if you can really feel like you've ever got total support from the parents, because it's just the way the game is. And you have to deal with that and not feel bad about it. Somebody else help me. I'm drowning here. Okay.
Sammy, have you got
I think I specifically choose to coach U9 and adults because it is glorious at both of those levels. Yeah. And specifically U9, I do a lot of house league, and I find the house league system in this country, maybe in North America, is so neglected. And that's where all the fun is. That's where all the majority of players are. That's where your future rec leagues are. That's where all the coaches come from, the refs come from. And that's where all the joy is too. So I highly recommend any coach that is coaching at the elite level to also dabble in some house league, because it just brings you so much joy. And then on the reverse side, coaching adults, then you're just dealing with that person. You don't have to deal with it as many outside influences because they are able to process a lot more. Although, as Thomas said, there's a lot more going on in their worlds too now. But yeah, try to find the joy as coaches, because you're right. There's a lot of things that can get you down. All those turkeys can get you down, but you got to soar with the eagles sometimes, and sometimes those are in house league.
I would love to jump in on this, and I was laughing this whole time because, as Wally knows, I coached U18 AAA in Calgary before going to law school, and I had some very interesting experiences with coaching with one of my coach mentors, Jordan, and we had some very over-involved parents, and which was totally different from how I played when I played U18 AAA. My parents were like, this is your job. If you have a problem, you deal with it. And it was like, yes, ma'am. And then I would go, liaise with the coach. It was not like that in any capacity. And I think almost naively, I had to kind of figure out how to draw boundaries with the parents. And going into the second season, that became a lot more important about drawing boundaries. What are parents, because the best way to, or I guess there's kind of two sides of that spectrum. The best way to alienate your coach or your parents on the team is to either set such strict boundaries that you don't get to talk to us ever, or to have no boundaries and they get to talk to you whenever, however they want to. And so finding that middle ground is difficult. But, we had times, just, and again, to another point, where we were at the Notre Dame tournament and I was working with this one defenseman, and we had been working so much on foot speed, and she would continuously do crossovers that would take her out of position instead of just C-cup push back to get herself kind of out of trouble if she needed to. And I kept going, why is she still doing this? We're teaching it. Well, she told me later on at the Notre Dame tournament that her parents would tell her every day in the car to not listen to what Coach Laura was telling her to do. And when we got to the Notre Dame tournament, she was beat every single time by these more elite players. And I just remember going, I cannot control for the life of me the ride home, but I can try to hammer into the the kid's brain, again, coming back to the why. This is why we're doing this, right? And then that's where the video became really important. Not showing her necessarily only the times where she was being beat, but when she was successful in this situations that we were trying to kind of teach her. Interestingly, I have asked to be a part of just the Saskatchewan Minor Hockey League this year, and I haven't coached outside of very elite levels in a long time. And I said, do you have any space for just a coach? I don't want to coach elite. I don't want to do anything like that. I'm in law school, so I don't have that much time, and I don't want to be a head coach. And so now I'm coaching a U15 team, and I am having so much fun. It is the most fun I've had in so many years coaching. But I will also say, interestingly, it's a lot of, I've had to do a lot of recalibration of my drills. Working at the elite level, coaching in the elite level, I can copy and paste all my drills because my drop off of skill is like this, right? Well, house league, my drop off of skill is this. I have girls that were on the cusp of making their AA team, and I have girls on the cusp of making their lowest level team in the league. Well, now I actually have to put effort into making sure every kid is getting something out of my drills. Because the things that I've been able to use for however many years, 8-9 years, doesn't work for these girls. Pieces of them do. But so it's been a really interesting thing. And I've actually had to coach a lot more, or use my coaching brain a lot more to say, like, okay, how am I doing this so that we're making everybody on the ice better, given the discrepancy and disparity in skill level? And then also the joy of, coaching with dads, hockey dads who have never, seen an elite stream ever, and are very much in the telling kids what to do, and, still very intensely coaching, and, just trying to also get them to kind of think about these concepts that we've been talking about, Wally, for so many years. But I think it's it's been definitely an interesting and really fulfilling kind of recalibration of my coaching to go back into house. So Sammy, I'm on the same page as you. If you ever burnt out at those elite levels, try going into community for a bit, see how that is. And just because it really makes you have to kind of rethink your coaching kind of abilities and the way you deliver your drills and the way you deliver your messages. And it's kind of fun.
Tom, your speaker.
Yeah, we're in a league, and I'm coaching a team they added to the league, so it's an elite, U15 provincial league. And of course, about the bottom third of our team wasn't good enough for this league. So playing the top teams, we lost about 4 in a row or something. So all of a sudden the clause came out with the parents and all this sort of thing. And so I tried something I'd never done before. About 2 Sundays ago, I had all the parents come in the dressing room after practice. And I took my little magnetic board out and I went through everything we do, as far as team play goes, like our D zone and our forecheck and all this kind of stuff. And I had the feeling they really appreciated it. And it's been much more positive ever since that happened. And I'd never done that before. But I think I talked to them on a level that gave them some respect. And a lot of the mothers really appreciated it because they had no clue. They hadn't really played the game. And, and it really worked well. So I think it's a pretty good thing to do with your team because the parents they're paying a lot of money and they really don't like to lose.
Tom, how many dads were in that audience?
It was 3/4 dads.
Okay. Like I'm finding that there are a lot of dads that have good experience, and a lot of their opinions are, very sound and they make sense, but it's just a matter of interfering with what the coach is doing. And I think your meeting, and I, in fact, might advocate that at our 2 arenas at ECTAS, where there's the boardroom, that the parent meeting be actually scheduled to do this, exactly what you've done early in the season, midpoint, and they want to know. They want to be heard, and they need to hear you and what you're doing in your thinking process because they just have no idea of the expertise of the coaching staffs, and particularly, in your case, Tom, with Cassie working with you and your son, who's also a lawyer, working with you for a number of years, that you've forgotten more than most people know. But the being able to gain respect of the parent group, coaches, and my role as a mentor was hopefully to bridge the communication gap to create a relationship of trust and respect. And I think for the most part, it's happened with a couple of teams. There still are some zealous parents, highly motivated parents that don't understand the process and the time and effort that coaches today put in to their craft. It's a lot more than I ever did as a young coach. So I think it gets down to trust and respect in your organization, within your team, and remembering your team is what it is like in the business of hockey and who's included in that and who's involved directly, and in community hockey and elite community hockey. It's the idea of teamwork. You're all on the same team, and the kids want the best possible experience to be the best they can be. And they're going to learn from that and go away from the game better people. So keep up the good work, Tom, and hang in there. So, Thomas, We got into a minor hockey stream here, and you're up at the highest level. How do you separate, or can you, the fact that the business of hockey is what drives the sport, and it occupies the minds of parents watching games, and it's the model. You know, the changing of coaches, the replacement of coaches, the trading of players, and the management of the bench to double shift your best players on PP and PK, and balancing the ice time so they're happy and feel good about themselves. How do you do that? How do you separate minor hockey from professional hockey?
I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know. I feel like what has worked for me in the past is having a strong set of values and share those values with the team and, if possible, with the parents, as Tom was indicating. And having the values as a something that we are striving for, and not so much the wins and the losses. And by living to whatever those values are, whether it's hard work and honesty and being inspirational, being relentless, resilient, no matter what, having fun, be creative, whatever those values are, anybody can, set them for themselves. But if you are striving for something that you can do no matter what, whether it's losing, winning, having a good game, having a bad game, then I think you can strive for something that you can accomplish every single day. And you can strive for satisfaction of those values. And the winning, hopefully, is a byproduct. So you're not aiming at winning, you're aiming at those values that you as a team have set. You spoke about it many times, Wally, about value statements, mission statements. And that is working for me also in my personal life, because as you said, and Dave knows this better as anybody, the professional sport is extreme pressure and extreme influences from the outside, from many different angles. And it's very easy to get lost in that and to lose oneself as a person, as a spirit. Very easy to get lost. And so having those set of values for myself, working in that environment, super important. And I know that there was times, and again, you guys know that you have both coached in the Olympics, but sometimes under that pressure, those values can get lost, and that's when the trouble begins. So I believe in that. No matter what is happening on the ice, no matter what's happening with the manager, my assistant coaches, my players, I need to have some values that are guiding my life, guiding myself. And a lot of it I've learned in Canada. Canada has been always I thought, a very strong country of values. The value of hard work, honesty, never being beaten, for example. No matter what there's no better country in the world than Canada in hockey, where you're down 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, and you still come back. Nobody had that. We didn't have that in Czechs. The Russians didn't have that. Not too many games that the Russians were down that they came back from in the history of the game. But Canada, probably the best country in the world. So all these values are sometimes, I feel, in Canada are getting lost as well. I think the new generation is, I don't want to be too critical, the new generation is a little different. But yeah, so that's what I believe in, is having your own values, and then values as a team, as an organization, and then you live up to them, and results are not gonna be you're not gonna be so much up and down according to the results. It's easier said than done, believe me. Like, you guys know that as much as I do. You've been in those situations.
I'm just wondering, Dave, if you've got anything to add on that Thomas's statement in terms of, I guess, knowing your why. Why are you coaching, and the values and the importance of that.
Well, I think that Thomas's comments were really, all the comments were really good. I know coaching is, it's difficult at any level, and you may think coaching kids is simplistic, but there's issues there too. So for all of us in coaching, I think Thomas is correct. We just have to, you have to know that you're happy with what you're doing. You know what you're doing is right. It may not be always appreciated at this moment. I've always found in coaching, a lot of times the payback for the coach comes much later. I've had players approach me and say, geez, you know, I didn't know back then that you were doing that for me, but I guess you were, and I appreciated it. So, you know, that's the way it is. You have to have thick skin. You have to be able to believe in yourself. And the main thing I think is always to try to find some time for some balance in your life, so that you appreciate other things. Like when you go out and you're driving down the street and you see a person waiting for a bus and you're driving a car, you think, you know, like, take those things in. I mean, be alert, be open to what's going on around you. Don't just get super focused. I think a lot of us, because the nature of sport is there's a tendency to get very insulated at times. And sometimes we just go to the event and we become very narrow thinking. And I think we got to be very careful of that. So having a good coaching staff that balances you, having a chance to laugh and have a bit of fun, I still think that's probably the essence of staying with it longer and doing something very valuable for the kids.
I wrote down in a couple of questions earlier, and it's really funny, Thomas. You had asked Dave one thing I'd written down, which is going through your college, Western Hockey League, and professional experience. And Dave, one question I have, very few people would know that you were a teacher, much like myself, and coach school sports. And how much do you feel your being a teacher and your work in education influence the way you evolved as a coach?
Well, I think when you're a teacher, you know, you have standards you have to meet in terms of how you deal with the kids. And I think that becomes just part of your routine when you're working with children or kids in a coaching situation. So obviously it helps you because it grounds you a little bit. I think I would probably use that term. We know there's an appropriate way to deal with people. At most teaching situations now, there's an appropriate way to deal with situations. Teaching now is much more complicated, as is coaching, than it was when I was. I mean, now I've talked to teachers when they make decisions on kids, they have to go to they have to get a committee with the principal and other people, and you got to look at it, and you got to sometimes have a lawyer look at what you may be trying to do to reprimand a child or get a child in line. So it's very complicated, Wally, and you know, that's just the nature of the beast. I think we're going to have always more and more complication, more and more things to deal with. I have 2 grandchildren that are teenagers, and interesting to watch them grow up and all the things that they have to make decisions on right and wrong. And so it makes you understand that it's a much more complicated world now than ever before. There's so many issues, you could go on, but all I'm going to say is that growing up now is more complicated. So in sport, don't do that. Try to keep it as free of that as you can. Yes, it will be up and down. There will be moments when you think, why am I doing this? And that's why we lose a lot of coaches, because a lot of coaches just can't deal with the stress, the evaluation all the time by people who don't know enough. But that's the nature of what we do. So that's why you have to you learn to love the game and enjoy the game. And I've always just felt trying to see a bigger picture is always important. There were times in my career where I think I got real narrow. It's interesting in coaching. The expression. It's a good expression. That sometimes people say the players don't have to love you, have to respect you. Yeah, okay, I'm not totally sold on that one, but it is important to be hard to please but easy to play for, and that means you're going to try to push and not push. You're going to try to influence the kids to be better and give them help to be better, but at all times too, you're going to make sure that you're doing it the right way, and that the kids are not suffering self-esteem issues because the things that you're doing or saying. Really got to be careful in coaching today to label kids too young. Like we always slap labels on kids. He's not smart, or she's not tough enough, or whatever. Like I just tell coaches all the time, don't get too much involved with the X and O's. Keep it simple, have fun, and then make sure that you laugh a little bit and enjoy it as much as you can. But you will meet frustrations, and there will be moments when you second guess yourself, and that's when you talk to people. And doesn't hurt to read. I do a lot of reading from other coaches and recognizing that they're in the same circumstance sometimes you are. And yes, it's not always possible to be hard to please and easy to play for. There are moments when you are hard to please and hard to play for. It's part of the deal.
Oh,
There's one thing, Hal Turris, I don't know if he came, I think he's gone, but he did a little video last week, and the last part is he takes the last 5 minutes of practice, and the players all gather in the middle, and everybody has to say something good to a teammate about what they did during that practice, so not a general thing like, something very specific, what they did during the practice. So I heard that, and I tried that on Tuesday night, and it seemed to work pretty good. And I'm interested to hear the feedback, especially from my assistant coach, Emily, because she hears from the girls a lot. But it was, so I took the 5 minutes at the end, and they did that. And so something interesting to try. Hal says it works great with him. The players ask for it if you don't do it.
Tom, on the weekend, Jordan coaching his U18 team after the game at Father David Bauer, we went to the meeting room and they had supper. And after the supper, he handed out a Wayne Halliwell sheet that he had revised to suit the nature of his team, putting down descriptors of players, just 3 or 4 words that, and on the flip side, just hold
Wally,
it.
you're popular.
Yeah, I just had to cut it off here. And what they did is the players had to write down the player on the team who fit the descriptor, the title. And it was somebody that was, the person you could go to talk about, and the listener, the one you would trust, or the one you would felt was the energy bunny, the one that picked your spirits up. And they went around the entire room and used that sheet. So everybody had to comment on the player they had put down in that category. And of course, once they mentioned the name, other people put their hands up as well as having that name down. And on the flip side, this is where the Halliwell thing came in. Players had to write down, okay, who would they invite? They didn't write it down. He just talked about it. Think about who you'd want to come over to spend time with your family, and who'd you want to be in the bunker with? And I'm sure you've all heard that before. And it was just a neat activity at the U18 level. So, those are the kind of communication things that have really transported from the past. Wayne Halliwell did that with our national programs as a sports psychologist for many years. And here you've got a U18 coach applying it, working with girls to better their game and make them better people and create a better team atmosphere. And I think that getting parents to appreciate that is huge. And I found with the manager there, the female manager of the team, a mother of one of the players, she was very impressed. And I think overall the team is impressed because one thing Jordan does is he sends out a weekly little bit of a descriptor of the week, how the weekend went, and what they're doing this week, and it's all really professionally written. So he keeps the parents informed in a general way. But there's a lot of coaches doing that kind of stuff, and I think the greatest need in human nature is the need to be appreciated, and I know I personally appreciate everything the coaches do. The players to me are incredible. They're so much smarter, able to absorb more information, think deeper, and wonder more, at least on the female side, than I ever did as a player. And so I think there's some learning to be had here as an educator and as a coach about the capacity of your athletes or your young student athletes and making the most of the experience for them. So,
Wally, on that note, I just want to add a little anecdote. I have a little kid. He's 11 years old. He's in Toronto and he wanted to work with me. So he sends me clips and he's 11 years old. And he says, Thomas, here's the clip. I'm joining the rush. Then it goes into a kick out. And then I'll delay. And then I exit kill. And I go back to defending the rush. He's 11 years old and he's like a head coach from the National Hockey League, like it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's something we're not respectful enough of. Like as a coach of that team, as an adult, well, we know it. We've been there. We've done that.
I know.
And YouTube, they look at YouTube like way more than we do, and they'll watch highlights and players they love, and so they're absorbing more information, not just sports information, societal information, what's happening on the real world out there. And so what they're exposed to isn't as simple as what we were exposed to.
You're right.
And so coaching the generation coming up, we've got a lot of work to do. I think it's a great opportunity to get to another level of function.
If I may, last question for Dave. Last one, if I may. I know I've hijacked the whole 2 hours today. I was very selfish. May I one more question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Dave, when you work with the Russian team, do you and you watch the video, do you have a process? Do you watch just the shifts, or do you watch just the retrievals, just the exits, just the forecheck, just the entries? Do you have a process?
Yeah, I do. I've always kind of done the same thing. I try to watch the video, and I try to not focus. I make sure I don't focus too much on the puck. I watch the tape. I know where the puck is like a player. I have to know where the puck is, but I'm trying to watch a bigger picture. So I detach myself from just the player with the puck and the closest players there, I try to expand my view a little bit and always try to take in a bigger picture as I'm watching the video. And I found that and then if I do see something, Thomas, I want to narrow in on, I just stop it like you would, go back, focus in your attention to that one small part of it. But when I watch the game, I kind of, and sometimes I actually start to be in some situations, for example, on breakouts, sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm the free defenseman. So I'll watch it and I'll think like I'm the free defenseman. What can I do for that defenseman? What option should I give him here? So I do that. It just depends upon what I'm focused on, but I try to make sure I don't just focus on the player with the puck. I try to watch as many players as I can and distance myself from the puck without losing sight of the puck. And then I do, Thomas, times I find with this Russian team, I do look for themes. So some days I'll really, really, really concentrate on one part of the game. It might be a small, like second quick. If you look at second man quick stuff and situations there, you're really focused on a small part of the game. But it's what I deliver that day. So that's the message, and I narrow my focus.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Dave, I just wanted to, this just came to my mind now. I'm been given a role of mentoring coaches. And I've reached the point where you don't know what to say or say anything. And in reality, they have to ask questions. And that's the bottom line. And the more experience they have, the more open they are to conversation. The less experienced they are, they don't know what questions to ask because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's really the biggest and most challenging part. And Thomas, I'm sure when you observe in your role, even though it's in a different capacity in an organization, you have your thoughts, they're valuable. And how do you communicate to the people that you work with in a way that it becomes a learning experience for everyone?
Dave, do you want to go, or do you want to?
I'll keep my answer very short. Like when I do coaching conferences and I'm delivering a topic, as much as I can, I always mark in my presentation time for a question. So I'll stop and I'll always ask the coaches, okay, this is a point I'm making here, and I'll pose a question and I get feedback, because that tells me right away, am I losing them? Sometimes when somebody gives you feedback from the group, it has a real impact on the group. It's not just you always giving the same information. So I just try to, as much as I can, engage the people I'm talking to and presenting to and asking their ideas, their impressions. If I don't get the response that's complete enough, I'll always acknowledge, that, hey, thank you for that feedback, some really good things. Here's a couple more things I would add to that. And so I try to make sure if I engage people, I never embarrass them. I make sure that they realize we appreciate the comments, and I just try to fill in the blanks if it's required.
It's the art of questioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, my role is very specific because I don't coach the players. I don't coach the Leafs players. I don't coach the Marlies players. And I don't coach the prospects that we have here in Europe. So one thing I had to learn, and I'm still learning, is to deliver the message through other people. And so I have to find who the player is trusting, who is impactful, whether it's the GM, head coach, assistant coach, teammate. And I try to deliver the message through other people. So it's like what Dave said, I am not the guy. Like, I am just a very small yet important part of the big puzzle. And I'm trying to use other people to get the message that needs to be delivered to the player. And of course, in consultation with other coaches, development coaches, video coaches, statisticians. So this job has really taught me to be a part of a bigger, big picture. And it's not about me. And sometimes the best message is the one that you don't deliver, that you hold off, that you're patient with, and you wait for the right time. And the best thing is, of course, when the player comes to you and says, Thomas, what do you think? Then I have to be ready with my information, with my video, with my feedback. And so sometimes holding back is more important than, coming and, hey, listen, I have something for you. And, working with the Finns, the prospects in Finland that will play for the Maple Leafs, I got to know the father of Sebastian Aho. He's a general manager in Finland. And he said one thing that I think is correct is he says this new generation needs a bigger why. They need to have the things way better explained, deeper explained, and they have to have a bigger context of why it's happening. So that's one thing I will never forget is like bigger why. And so before I deliver a feedback to a player, I have to know whether he's having a good streak, he's got good games, or he's injured, or he's not feeling good. What is the context of the situation before I even attempt to deliver a message?
It's good.
Thank you, Thomas. Excellent. Excellent. Well, 2 hours and 16 minutes and 48 seconds. That's a pretty good shark session today. Dave, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep.
I'm going to have to book some flights to go to Winnipeg. I won't be around this weekend, Tom. My brother was involved in an accident in Winnipeg, so I'm going to visit him. And I just want to thank everybody for coming on. And I'm glad we got to meet Laura. I've known her for a number of years. Just a tremendous mind for the game. And of course, Sammy joining today was a real bonus. Great young ladies. And I think the thing, Thomas, you and I have learned from working with the women over so many years is the emotional intelligence and the ability to want to know why and understand.
Yeah,
not just listen to being told what to do and doing it.
absolutely.
I think young boys today, like the boy who's sending you video, is like that because sending you video, he's looking for information from you. He is asking you.
Yeah.
And that's ahead of the curve at 11 years old. So
he's sending me video and I am learning from him.
Oh, yeah. And of course that's, and that's, we learned the student is the teacher is the reality. And Tom uses the phrase, let the game teach.
Yeah.
So the idea of deliberate practice and coaching and directing and telling, there's a fine line between training and practicing and the idea of being able to apply those skills into decision making in a game. And I think the thing that I observe more is the difference in coaching staffs and their approaches, all achieving really good results, but with very different approaches. But the bottom line is they're open to learning. And we just keep up this kind of work. And I'm not sure what's going to happen next week, but Thomas, join us anytime. And
please keep sending me those links.
Okay, well, what I do after this is I'll post the entire presentation first, and then I'll edit it. I'm not sure when I'll get to do that over the weekend, this weekend, but Dave, it's such a pleasure to have you on, and as usual, great insights and deep thoughts, something that I think people, coaches today aren't doing because they've been given drills to deliver and not think about what they're doing and whether they're accomplishing a purpose, and learning how to break them down and build them up. That's the biggest thing I'm dealing with, is doing drills that are suitable for a university team, but not for the U13 team. And what are the skills and tactical skills that need to be worked on? So anyway, guys, it's been a great morning. Thank you very much for coming on. And
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Wally, Tom, Dave.
Yep. Tom, good luck, guys. Wally, good. Hope your brother's fine.
I do too, Will.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you very
All the
much.
best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Oh, boy.
So Tom, what's up?
Well, not much. We got our practice tonight, 90-minute